One single business deal nearly destroyed Joan Rivers' entire career. In 1986, she made a bold move. She left her longtime home to star in a new show on Fox. But her mentor felt deeply betrayed and blacklisted her forever. TV stations refused to air her program. Fellow celebrities turned their backs, refusing to visit her sets. Within just months, Fox fired her. And then, tragedy struck again. Just 3 months later, her husband took his own life. Even at her lowest, fake interviews ridiculed her pain. This is the untold story of Joan Rivers, how Hollywood punished her for daring to break the rules and speak her truth. Joan Rivers was born Joan Alexandra Malinsky on June 8, 1933, in Brooklyn, New York. Her parents were Russian immigrants, and her father, Dr. Meir Malinsky, was a well-respected doctor who loved telling jokes. Growing up Jewish in a quiet Brooklyn neighborhood called Doctors Row, Joan shared a peaceful childhood with her older sister. It was the kind of place where kids rode bikes freely, and neighbors felt like family. But even in this safe bubble, Joan dreamed far beyond. To her, Manhattan was a magical world just waiting to be conquered, and she was determined to leave Brooklyn behind for the bright lights. Her ambitions surfaced early. At just 8 years old, she mailed a framed photo of herself to MGM Studios, hoping for a break. Even her first-grade teachers noticed something special. On her report card, they wrote about her strong interest in acting and fierce drive to succeed. They also noted she talked way too much, a trait that would later become her signature style. As she grew, Joan dove headfirst into school plays and became vice president of her high school drama club by age 16. Joan's upbringing, combined with her immigrant roots, forged her sharp wit and relentless ambition. After high school, she started at Connecticut College but soon transferred to Barnard College in New York City. There, she balanced demanding classes with acting in student theater. She worked hard and graduated in 1954 with a degree in English literature and anthropology, earning prestigious Phi Beta Kappa honors. Though she loved performing, Joan initially chose a more conventional path. She took a job as a buyer for a chain store and married the owner's son. But that marriage lasted just 6 months. Joan quickly realized a normal life wasn't enough. The fire to perform still burned inside her, and she knew she had to chase her dreams again. Before Joan Rivers became the fearless, razor-sharp comedian we remember, she was just Joan Malinsky, a young woman fighting to survive in the city that never sleeps. In 1958, at just 25 years old, Joan was juggling multiple jobs just to make ends meet. She worked as a tour guide at Rockefeller Center, wrote and proofread for an ad agency, and helped customers at Bond clothing stores. But her life took a turn when her agent, Tony Rivers, told her she needed a stage name. She quickly picked Joan Rivers, thinking it sounded more exciting. Later, she'd say having a stage name was like putting on a party dress. It helped her survive the tough, rowdy nightclub scenes. But underneath it all, she was still Joan Malinsky, scared, confused, and unsure. That split between the fearless comedian on stage and the insecure woman behind the curtain stayed with her for life. At first, show business seemed determined to push her away. Despite graduating from Barnard in 1954, her dreams of becoming a serious actress crumbled quickly. Her first shot on The Tonight Show, hosted then by Jack Paar, was a disaster that set her career back. For 7 grueling years, Joan stuck to a tough routine. She'd take the train from Larchmont into New York City, get cheap headshots in photo booths, and spend hours scouring theater ads while nursing a coffee at Howard Johnson's. By 1965, at just 31, the industry was already writing her off as washed up. Meanwhile, young comedians like Woody Allen, Richard Pryor, and George Carlin were breaking through. Joan was stuck in tiny clubs where no one really noticed. On top of that, her first marriage had fallen apart, adding heartbreak to her struggle. What made Joan different was her refusal to give up, even when every door slammed in her face. And all this happened before she truly found her comedic voice. Desperate for stage time, she tried everything, even performing as Pepper January and borrowing jokes from TV. Her first paid gig was in a Boston strip club, facing bored, distracted crowds. Not glamorous at all, club owners saw nothing special in her either. Fred Weintraub, who ran the famous Bitter End, gave her a few chances, but the audience just didn't respond. Hoping to boost her chances, he put her in a small comedy trio called Jim, Jake, and Joan, but it quickly fell apart. Even at the Duplex, a small cabaret, she struggled. She started with funny songs, but the owner pushed her to just talk to the audience. Around 1961, she tried improv at Chicago's Second City. But the male actors didn't like her ambition, they didn't want her stealing laughs, and she refused to back down. Though it was tough, Second City sharpened Joan's timing, toughened her skin, and helped build the fearless, fast style she'd become famous for. Joan Rivers had been chasing a big break for years. She auditioned 7 times over 3 years, and failed every time. By 31, many thought she'd missed her chance. She was washed up. But then, on February 17, 1965, everything changed. She got another shot on The Tonight Show, this time with Johnny Carson hosting. Her first appearance with Jack Paar had bombed, but this felt different. Carson didn't just let her perform, he invited her to sit beside him. That was huge. In front of millions, Carson looked at her and said, "You're going to be a star." That moment flipped Joan's world. Critics loved her. Time magazine compared her to Woody Allen, saying she was funny about everything, but still had her own style. In weeks, Joan went from struggling to one of America's hottest comedians. Bigger shows, writing gigs for The Tonight Show, the door finally swung wide open. Years later, Rivers became a Tonight Show regular. By September 1983, NBC made it official. Joan Rivers was Johnny Carson's permanent guest host. She'd shared the spot with others, but after nearly 100 appearances, no one could top her. In total, she hosted 190 times before leaving in 1986. Joan was blunt about NBC's sexism. She said the network never let a woman host full-time because she wasn't a threat to Carson. But even so, she broke barriers few women dared approach. In July 1984, she made history again by hosting the first ever stereo broadcast of The Tonight Show. Only one station in New York could play it in stereo, but it was a big leap forward. While climbing TV's ladder, Joan was also conquering Las Vegas. Her Vegas career lasted an astonishing 43 years. She joked she was the slut of the strip because she worked for anyone. But beneath the humor, she was trailblazing. She first appeared in Vegas in 1969, sharing the Riviera stage with John Davidson. But her 1972 Caesars Palace debut really put her on the map. Unlike women before her, Joan refused to play the fool just to get laughs. She wanted to look glamorous and said proudly, "I was the first one that said, try to look good." Over the years, Joan headlined alongside huge names like Diana Ross and Anne Margaret, something almost unheard of for a female stand-up comedian at the time. From 1983 to 1991, she kept shining at Caesars Palace, sharing the stage with the Smothers Brothers and Gary Shandling. Even when she wasn't performing regularly, she kept coming back. Her last shows were at the Venetian in 2012, proving she was a Vegas legend. Just 3 years after her Tonight Show breakthrough, Joan showed she was more than a stand-up comedian. In 1968, she launched her own daytime talk show, That Show with Joan Rivers. Each episode had a special theme. She'd open with jokes about the topic, then bring on a celebrity and an expert to dive deeper. Johnny Carson himself was her very first guest. Big stars like Jerry Lewis, Don Rickles, and Joel Grey followed. The show lasted only 2 years but set a blueprint that future talk shows would copy for decades. At a time when women rarely ran their own shows, Joan was already breaking through and making it normal. And then there was a phrase that would become a permanent part of American culture: "Can we talk?" It started in Vegas during the 1980s. Joan made a tough joke about Elizabeth Taylor's weight, and when the audience gasped, she stopped and said, "Can we talk here?" It was perfect. 3 simple words that made people feel like they were part of a private conversation. That phrase summed up her entire style. Joan didn't want to lecture. She wanted you to laugh with her, like close friends sharing secrets. Even after her passing in 2014, people still remember those words. Rabbi Sarah Schendelman said Joan's real legacy wasn't just her jokes. It was how she connected with people. "Can we talk?" wasn't just a line, it was an invitation to be honest, to laugh at life, and to be fearless while doing it. Then, in early 1986, Joan Rivers made a choice that changed everything. At that time, she was filling in for Johnny Carson on The Tonight Show almost 100 times a year. She was seen as his natural successor. But behind the scenes, something else was happening. Barry Diller, the new boss at the Young Fox network, offered Joan something no woman had ever been given before: her own late-night talk show. It was a chance to make history. Joan kept the talk secret, even from Carson, afraid that if he found out, he might try to stop her. And before the deal went public, Joan tried to call Carson 8 times, but couldn't get through. When the news finally broke, it was too late. Carson felt betrayed. The man who had once proudly introduced her to America now saw her as a traitor. That one moment destroyed their 23-year friendship. They never spoke again. The deal with Fox was massive. Joan signed a 3-year contract worth $10 million, an even bigger amount in today's money. There was another part to the deal. Fox agreed to hire her husband, Edgar Rosenberg, as the show's producer, even though he had little experience. Joan couldn't say no. She signed the papers, thinking she was stepping into a brighter future. When Joan Rivers launched The Late Show on October 9, 1986, she made history as the first woman to host a late-night network talk show. Fox gave her a $10 million budget and big promises. They wanted her show to compete directly with Johnny Carson's Tonight Show, but Carson wasn't about to make it easy. He blacklisted anyone who appeared on Joan's show, making it nearly impossible for her to book big stars. Some TV stations, like one near Carson's hometown, refused to even air her show out of loyalty to him. Others rejected it simply because they didn't like Joan's style. Fox, trying to keep everyone happy, gave affiliates the option to skip the show if they wanted. That decision crushed the show's reach. Within just a few months, the ratings tanked. What began as a groundbreaking moment in TV history quickly turned into a sinking ship. Fox, who once treated Joan like their crown jewel, now saw her as a liability they wanted to dump. Behind the scenes, things were even worse. Joan's husband, Edgar Rosenberg, was producing the show. At first, Fox accepted it, but when ratings dropped, they pointed fingers at Edgar. They told Joan she had to fire her husband if she wanted to keep her job. Joan refused. On May 15, 1987, Fox fired them both. The final episode descended into chaos. Set was covered in toilet paper, slime, and shaving cream. Joan packed the night with wild guests, Howie Mandel, Pee Wee Herman, and a young Chris Rock. Even her stage manager appeared, dressed as a crazy alter ego. Watching that last show was like witnessing a fighter going down swinging, knowing the battle was already lost. Joan later said it felt like they had executed her career in public. Just 91 days after being fired, tragedy struck again. On August 14, 1987, Edgar Rosenberg was found dead in a Philadelphia hotel room. He had taken a fatal overdose of Valium. The day before, he had called Joan, telling her he would be coming home soon. But behind those words, he was struggling deeply. Edgar had never fully recovered from a massive heart attack in 1984. Though he had tried to turn his life around, friends said he looked more broken by the day. During a trip to Ireland, internal bleeding worsened his condition. By the time he died, he was a shadow of his former self. After Edgar's death, Joan uncovered another nightmare. He had mismanaged their finances so badly she was $37 million in debt. In one heartbreaking moment, 8 months later, Joan admitted she came close to ending her own life. She said she was sitting with a gun in her hand when her little dog Spike jumped into her lap. That small moment of love saved her. But the world wasn't done being cruel. While Joan was still grieving, GQ magazine published a fake interview with her. It showed her making cold jokes about Edgar's death, including a sick reference to the Rosenbergs who were executed for espionage. The interviewer was Ben Stein, a former speechwriter who had never even met Joan. He made it all up. Already crushed by loss and humiliation, Joan fought back. She sued Stein and GQ for libel. Against all odds, she won a settlement, and donated every penny to charity. But the damage to her soul was done. Later said she felt like a non-person in Hollywood, shunned and humiliated in the darkest chapter of her life. After losing almost everything, Joan Rivers came back stronger than anyone expected. In 1989, she launched The Joan Rivers Show. It wasn't just another talk show. It was her phoenix moment, a way to rise from the ashes. Just a few years earlier, she had been fired from her late-night Fox show. Months after that, her husband had taken his own life. Hollywood had turned its back on her. She was blacklisted. No one wanted to work with Joan, but she refused to quit. She fought back with a syndicated daytime show that premiered on September 5, 1989. Joan made it happen through her own company, PGHM Productions, partnering with Tribune Entertainment. Paramount helped with the first season. Tribune handled the rest. The show ran for 4 seasons and crossed 1,000 episodes, becoming a major force in early 90s TV. For years, you couldn't even find episodes anywhere. But in 2019, reruns finally started airing again. By 2021, some episodes made it to streaming. A whole new generation got to see Joan at her best, bold, funny, and fearless. One of the most emotional moments of Joan's career came in 1990, just 3 years after her world collapsed. She won a Daytime Emmy for Outstanding Talk Show Host. Her own show wasn't even nominated for Best Talk Show that night. But there she was, standing on stage with tears streaming down her face. She said, 2 years ago, I couldn't get a job, and my income dropped. Then she dedicated the award to her late husband Edgar, telling the audience, this is really for him. He was with me at the beginning. For Joan, it wasn't just a trophy. It was proof she could survive anything, even being banned by Johnny Carson from The Tonight Show after she left for Fox. That ban lasted decades, only lifted years later when Jimmy Fallon took over. But none of that mattered on that night. Joan had won her fight back. While rebuilding her career, Joan stayed in the public eye in other ways, too. She snagged a prime spot in the center square on Hollywood Squares, making people laugh with her quick wit. Around the same time, Joan gave one of her most famous performances, without even showing her face. In 1987, while her late-night show was still unraveling, she voiced the robot Dot Matrix in Mel Brooks' Spaceballs. It was a hilarious, wild parody of Star Wars, and Joan's voice made her character unforgettable. Though Spaceballs didn't explode at the box office initially, it quickly became a cult classic. Her role proved she could laugh at herself and stay part of pop culture, even when everything else seemed to be falling apart. But Joan wasn't done with just TV and movies. In 1994, she made a bold move. Joan co-wrote and starred in a Broadway play called Sally Ma and Her Escorts. It was based on the life of Lenny Bruce's mother, a woman who shaped one of comedy's legends. Critics didn't all agree on the play itself, but they unanimously praised Joan's acting. Some called her powerful, others said she was fearless. Though the play ran for only 50 performances, Joan earned a Tony Award nomination for Best Actress, and a Drama Desk nomination, too. That same year, she starred alongside her daughter Melissa in Tears and Laughter, The Joan and Melissa Rivers Story, a TV movie about how they survived after Edgar's death. By turning personal heartbreak into art, Joan showed the world she was more than a comedian, she was a fighter, able to turn pain into something unforgettable. Joan Rivers didn't just walk red carpets. She changed them forever. When she started hosting E! Live from the red carpet in 1996, it wasn't just about watching celebrities arrive anymore. It became entertainment. She asked stars, "Who are you wearing?" At first, people made fun of her. Even the New York Times criticized her grammar. But Joan didn't care. She fired back, saying they were wrong, and time proved her right. With Melissa by her side, Joan reinvented red carpet interviews. Instead of dull Q and amp, it felt like real conversations. She made it so popular that in 2005, TV Guide Channel offered her an $8 million contract to leave E! Joan had set a new rule: if you walked the red carpet, your fashion was fair game. When E! Live later offered her Fashion Police in 2010, Joan wasn't thrilled. She thought the show sounded dumb and beneath her, but she took the job, and it exploded. Millions tuned in every week to hear her fearless commentary. Joan didn't hold back. She joked about everyone, from Lena Dunham's nude scenes to Michelle Obama's outfits. She even called Michelle a tranny, which sparked huge backlash. Younger stars like Jennifer Lawrence hated the show, saying it made bullying okay. Joan didn't flinch. When CNN accused Joan of being mean, she stormed out, saying she only said what everyone was already thinking. Joan loved wearing fur and didn't care who hated her for it, even after someone threw red paint on her coat in 1997. Though Peter denied involvement, Joan never apologized for her bold jokes or choices. She faced backlash for jokes about the Holocaust and kidnap victims but stood firm, using humor to confront difficult subjects. Over the years, Joan received death threats but never stopped speaking her mind. At 75, she won The Celebrity Apprentice, raising over $500,000 for charity and gaining a new generation of fans. Behind the scenes, Joan faced a $2 million lawsuit from her former manager, which she fought fiercely. In 2014, she returned to The Tonight Show after decades of being banned, a full circle moment just months before her death. Joan died on September 4, 2014, after complications from a routine throat procedure. Investigations revealed multiple medical failures at the clinic, including unauthorized photos and ignored warning signs. Melissa Rivers sued the clinic in 2015, securing a confidential settlement in 2016, determined to prevent such a tragedy from happening again.